As Josh mentioned earlier, today must be National Blue Day because I see a lot of blue striped shirts out there today, so we're all in good company this morning. But it just kind of reminds me, I wore the shirt because I haven't worn it in a while, but it also feels very comfortable, which got me to start thinking about some of our comforting toys. Well, as you were growing up, what toys did you have that were kind of your favorite? This is the time that you can shout it out. It's okay. No one's going to look at you funny.
Barbie.
What is it? Barbie.
Guns.
Legos.
G.I. Joe.
G.I. Joe.
Baby dolls.
Baby dolls. Yeah, we have some of those. We have like Legos. I got a picture of Legos up there. Barbie dolls. Sorry, Tim, no guns. Didn't think of that in time. No G.I. Joe either. But I did think about a stuffed animal, teddy bears. Now, teddy bears were kind of they weren't my go-to when I was little, but it became something special to me because my grandmother, one year, she had 20 grandkids, and she spent a whole year making teddy bears. She cut the patterns out of the fabric, she sewed them together, put their eyes on, put their nose on, and stuffed them. And it took me a little bit to think about how long it took her to do 20 teddy bears, but she did them. And I was a little bit older, so I thought I was a little too cool for the teddy bear as we're having our family Christmas party. But that bear did a lot for me. It went to a lot of places with me. And so it became that special toy. It became that toy that I chose to connect with. And so as that idea of being chosen, that idea of picking and being a part of, it rings in our heart and our mind. Let's look at our scripture this morning. It comes from Luke chapter 1, verses 26 through 29. It's on the screen behind me. It's in your bulletin if you would join me in reading it. In the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy, God sent the angel Gabriel to Nazareth, a town in Galilee, to a virgin pledged to be married to a man named Joseph, a descendant of David. The virgin's name was Mary. And the angel went to her and said, "Greetings, you who are highly favored. The Lord is with you." Mary was greatly troubled at these words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. Just let that sink in for a minute. Last week we talked about Zechariah, and as he was there in the temple, and the angel showed up, and he startled him, and he didn't quite know what was going on. We now have this other picture of Mary. A picture of she's sitting there, and this angel coming to her, but it's not that the angel started her per se. It's what the angel said that caused her to pause. That angel says, "Greetings, you who are highly favored." Now let that sink in for a moment. Maybe we need to picture Mary a little bit differently in our minds. Sometimes we're so far removed from the story that we make Mary bigger than who she is. Mary was just a normal teenager, ready to be married. That was the culture that she grew up in, that she was an arranged marriage, and nothing special about her. Nothing that made her stand out. Nothing. She wasn't the top of her class. She wasn't anything special. But the angel came to her. The angel came to her and said, "Greetings, you who are highly favored." That word favored means something, in the Greek word, it's the keratou. I know it looks kind of like one of those Star Wars is coming out, so like kind of a planet that they would name in Star Wars, but it means grace. It means encompassed with favor. To honor with blessing. I mean, that word that the angel used says in our minds, favored means something different. Favored means something that we have to earn, something that we have to gain, something that we have to understand or come up with. Next slide, please. Thank you. But it's more than that. It's more than something like, you have that teacher's pet or that favorite child, what have they done to earn that love or to gain that understanding? But this word, keratou, this word that the angel uses, is something different. It's something that God gave. It's nothing that Mary earned. It's nothing that Mary had done. It has nothing to do with any of her actions. It's a grace that God had given her. And that helps us understand a little bit. It helps us to gain that understanding of who we are. Because as God looks at us, He chooses us. That angel could come upon us in our day and say, "Greetings, you who are highly favored." And we may step back and think about all the things we've done, but that's not what God is saying. Greetings, you who I see and I know. It's a little different than what we think about, because we've been looking at the island of misfit toys, and today we're looking at the elephant. We don't know the elephant's name. We don't know if it's a he or a she. It's just an elephant with pink polka dots. It's been a great debate in the office. Is it a boy elephant or is it a girl elephant? We're not certain. One says girl because of the pink polka dots. I say boy because it's, I don't know, just because I'm a boy. But the toy is one that, remember, the toys on the island of misfit toys are just ones that weren't wanted. Some of them don't have anything wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with the elephant. It's just that the child that was given to just didn't want it for that moment, for whatever reason. So it just feels like that outcast. It feels like it's not special. It feels like there's nothing for it to live for. It was not being used. It just sat there. And sometimes we understand that, because there are times when we don't think we are chosen for anything. It's like in gym class. I mean, some of us weren't the first ones picked, and some of us weren't the last ones picked. We're kind of in the middle. Yeah, you're a good enough player, but yeah, all right, whatever, just be on the team. We understand that part. We understand that elephant. And if we think about Mary for a moment, that's where Mary was before that angel showed up at her doorstep. Mary was in that same boat. It's one among many. One among thousands and millions. And if you think about the time, and you think about God being outside time, and you think about those moments where God could have chosen any time and any person, any young mother-to-be, to bring Jesus into the world. But He chose Mary. And there's other things that the other people that God has chosen, other people that God has put out there. I mean, God chooses people all the time. We think of Adam and Eve. Think of, if you think about Adam and Eve for a minute, as you go in Genesis 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and you see as that creation story that's given to us, and you see that Adam and Eve are there, and God walks with them. Yeah, God created them, but God didn't have to walk with them. God didn't have to interact with them. But He chose to do so, because He chose Adam and Eve. Just like Abraham. Abraham was one of a bunch of different people. Actually, he wasn't Nahor's only son. And God could have chose Nahor, Abraham's dad. But He chose Abraham. He says, if you follow me, I will be your God, and I will make you more numerous than the stars, more than the grains of, your descendants will be more than the grains of sand. God chose Abraham. Same with Ruth. If we look at Ruth the Moabite for a minute, her mother-in-law, she married into a family that was foreign to her. They had come from Israel and moved to Moab. And not just moved to Moab, but then they married they had two sons, and the two sons married two girls. And the two sons died, and the husband died, and the mother-in-law is going back to Israel. She's ready to go back home to be with her family, but she doesn't want the two daughter-in-laws to go with her. She doesn't want them to give up their lives. Could have been two people, but Ruth said, I will go. Wherever you go, I will go. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. See, God had chosen Ruth. And now Ruth is choosing God. If we think about the disciples for a minute, we think about the Jesus going among them and said, "Follow me and I will make you fishers of men, fishers of humanity. I will teach you how. I will teach you why. I'll teach you the love. I'll show you and model it before you." And Jesus chose them. And in the end, they chose Jesus. And if you think about it for a minute, that's kind of where we are, right? God has chosen us. He's chosen us. We sit here this day because God has done something in our life, or God is calling us, or God is opening that door for us to see Him, and we're beginning to have those glimpses of who Jesus is. And like Mary, we're kind of troubled. You hear that in verse 29? She was troubled about the words she heard. What kind of greeting is this? As Jesus chooses us, and we think about what He's saying, we think about what is going on, there comes that moment where we're kind of troubled. What does this mean for my life? What does it mean for me to make Jesus the Lord of my life? What does it mean for me to respond to Jesus? Because that's what it is. See, God has chosen us, and God is waiting for that response from us. What will we do? What will we say? Mary, as she thinks about it and as she hears it, you come to Luke 1, verse 38, she says, "I am the Lord's servant. May it be as you have said today." Mary made that response. Remember, she thought about it. She was troubled. I don't understand, but she pondered about it and let it build into her heart. Later on in Luke, you'll see about Luke, I think it's chapter 4, as they're at the temple, and we have the story of Jesus kind of running away from Mary and Joseph and sitting at the steps and teaching people. Mary and Joseph go home, and they realize they left their son back, and they had to travel back to Jerusalem and take him home. Kind of give them the what to, because that's what we as parents do, right? You should have listened to me. But at the end of that part of Jesus' life, it says that Mary pondered these things in her heart. See, Mary was chosen by God. And then Mary responded to God and walked with God, and through those moments, wondering, what's this boy that God has given me, this child who's going to change the world, this child who's changing my life right now? How do I respond? How do I continue to love? What do I continue to do? Because I think that's the key thing in our response as God has chosen us, and as we begin to respond to God. There's a couple things that come up. I think we start off by seeking. In our response, we seek. See, God has already chosen us. He's already laid the groundwork. If we look at Romans 5, verses 3 and 5, it says that while we were yet sinners, God still chose us to send His Son to die for us. If we go back into Isaiah, we see that we're written on the palm of God's hand. If you look at the Psalms, it says, Psalm 139, it says, even when we rise or when we sleep or when we rise, wherever it is, God knows us. God knows the words before they're even on the tip of our tongue. God has chosen us. And He's waiting for our response. And that first response we have is we seek. We seek to find God. We seek where God is. We seek to what's going on. Mary was always, we don't know where Mary was at, but my guess is that Mary went to the temple or went to synagogue, and Mary listened to the rabbis. Mary would have worshiped and been present there. Mary was obeying her parents as they arranged this marriage. She didn't know Joseph that well. Maybe she didn't even meet Joseph until the day of the betrothal. But she said, yes, okay, I'll listen. I'm here. I'm seeking whatever it is that's going on. I want to be a part of it. I'm seeking. Your response to God is very similar. You're here right now. Some of us, it's been our life that we've always grown up in being a part of church, and so we continue to come. We continue to be present. Some of us, it's that experience that we have of God in a different place that calls us to grow deeper in that understanding of who Jesus is. But we seek. We look. Mary next began to listen. As she heard the angel's greeting, as she heard the angel's greeting, highly favored one, blessed are you, and she begins to listen to what the angel is telling her. Her response in verse 30 is, "How can this be? I am still a virgin." And the angel went on to tell her what God was going to do. That she was going to be with child, and she's going to name him Jesus, where he's going to be Emmanuel, God with us. He's going to do some amazing things in this life. She listened and put them into her heart. If we look at Luke chapter 9 and verse 23, that as disciples were there and they were listening to Jesus, and Jesus began to say that we must deny ourselves, pick up our cross, and follow after him. On a daily basis, that we're listening. Because in that moment, as we're listening and listening to what God is doing, listening to what Jesus is saying, it takes different aspects of our life. It's about digging into the Word. It's about looking up the Bible and seeing what is written there. And if you need some help with that, in your worship folder, in your bulletin, there's a foundation. It's a daily devotional that leads up to next Sunday. You'll read something in the Old Testament. You'll read 3 things in the Old Testament. You'll read 2 things in the New Testament. But it's designed to bring you into the Word. It's designed to bring you into what Jesus and God is doing now. It's also that time of prayer. As we're listening, sometimes we treat God like that big Santa list. We go, here, God, this is what I need. Boom, 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 boom. But it's a conversation. Just like Mary, when she said, "How can this be? I am a virgin," then she got quiet to listen. And prayer is the same way. We begin to speak to God, but then we have that moment to listen. I was talking with another colleague earlier this week, and we were talking about prayer, and we started talking about that, taking that moment to listen. I mentioned a previous church I was at, before I would do the pastoral prayer, I waited 1 minute. You ever sit in silence for 1 minute? You ever sit in silence as a corporate body for 1 minute? It gets a little fidgety. It gets a little bit uncertain because we don't want to listen, because we don't want to be quiet. Our world is so noisy that it takes that time to listen, to stop. And that's what Mary did. She could have let her thoughts run. She could have let them go for miles upon miles. I'm just a virgin. I'm too young. I can't do this. This isn't who I am. I don't know if I can be this mother that you're asking me to be. I don't know if I can raise the Son of God. But she was quiet. And she listened. Sometimes in our listening, we hear from other people. We hear what others are saying. We listen in community because we listen to other people and what they have to share with us. Their heart. Mary didn't quite go to Joseph first. Actually, she goes to Elizabeth, her cousin, who was 6 months pregnant, as Luke 1:26 shares with us. And she spends some time with Elizabeth, hearing what Elizabeth has to say, hearing what's going to happen as she continues to grow, as she continues to have this baby within her. Listening to how Elizabeth says that child within you, Elizabeth says that the baby inside of her leapt for joy at Mary's coming. Reminding Mary that there's something special within her. Something that's going to change the world. So it's not just seeking, it's not just listening, but there's also this other piece that sometimes we kind of shy away from, and that's called obeying. See, in our response to Jesus, as God has chosen us, and that response for us to Jesus is to seek, to listen, and to follow, to obey. To say, as Mary said, let it be so, I am the Lord's servant. Another prayer that Jesus teaches in Matthew, and it's a form in Luke, it's also known as the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That's part of our prayer. We say to God, let your will be done and here within me, that I may follow. If we go to Philippians, Paul talks about it as well in Philippians chapter 2. He gives us this hymnology, this hymn of who Jesus is. Not someone equal to God, but took on the form of humanity, took on human form. Was obedient even to the point of death. Go back to that Luke 9 passage where it says to pick up our cross and to follow Jesus. One of the other pieces that I was looking at or read earlier today talked about how we... forget it because I forgot what it was already gone. It comes into that question that what is our response to Jesus? And these three responses, we can be in one of those areas. Maybe you're today just seeking out who is Jesus? Who is he in my life? Maybe you're in a spot of listening. Maybe you're in a spot where the noisy world has drowned out Jesus' voice so much that you just need to step back and quiet the heart for a minute to hear. Or maybe you're in a spot where you've heard Jesus. You know what he's calling you to do. And it's time to do it. It's time to be, as Mary said, that I am the Lord's servant. Let it be so with what you have told me to do. Maybe it's that time of forgiving. Maybe that's that time of action. Maybe it's that time of delving deeper into your faith. I don't know where you are today. But I do know the scriptures are true. And the scriptures give us that experience of life. And as we look at scripture, we see people seeking, listening, and obeying. We also know that when you seek, you will find. When you listen, you will hear. And when you obey, you'll see the glory of God. What will you do today? Will you seek? Will you listen? Will you obey? And if you want some help in those areas, there are many people in this room that will be able to help you. And if you want it to be a private conversation between you and I, let's have the conversation. Let's see what God is doing. Because just like Mary, he is choosing you to be his servant, to be his child, to be his disciple in this world.